Let me tell you a story. It begins, as many tragedies do, behind closed doors. The world never truly saw her, not the way he did. Not the way he twisted her into something small, silent, and easy to control. Her name was Elira. It used to mean freedom in a language no one in her life remembered. But the irony of it hung heavy on her, like the bruises she stopped covering years ago. Because Elira had not known freedom in a very long time. She was the kind of woman people passed by, the kind whose eyes didn't meet yours anymore, the kind who answered questions with a smile that didn't reach her cheeks. And her husband, no, not a husband, a captor with a ring. He was oh so charming in public. It was always the same, the quiet tension in the air, the subtle slamming of doors, the bruises like storms blooming beneath her skin, until one night, his rage went too far. Elira's heart kept beating, but her mind fled. Her body was left behind in a hospital bed, hooked to machines to keep her alive. When her eyes opened again, they did not open to monitors or lights. She was in the strangest of places. A forest, quiet and impossibly tall. The air hummed like memory. Here, time did not pass, or if it did in ways no clock could measure. Each night, just as the moon reached its highest point, Elira would waken again, as if called to the forest by something deeper than thought. She did not question it. There were no questions here, only the stillness, the path beneath her feet, and the strange sense that she was not entirely alone. This place was not a dream. It was the in-between, a place for the broken to drift, for the wounded to hide, a place made by a mind too fragile to bear the truth. Elira did not remember her life, not yet. The forest had taken it from her to protect her. And here, beneath the stars and sorrow, her story would begin again. Elira walked this strange place. She wasn't sure why, or even how long she'd been doing it. There were no roads, just winding paths that appeared when she needed them, and vanished when she turned back. Sometimes the moss grew straight under her feet. Other times, it became sharp for no apparent reason. The trees whispered. Once she thought she heard a song. Was someone singing? Other times, she could hear children laughing, but when she followed, there was nothing. She started to glimpse other people. A woman with hair like silver walking silently through the trees. A man in an old-fashioned suit staring at the sky. A child curled beneath a glowing tree, fast asleep. Elira would blink and they'd be gone. Were they real? Or were they just the forest playing tricks? She didn't know. She couldn't remember much of anything. Not who she was, not what had happened before she woke up here. Just her name, Elira. But even that felt soft around the edges, like a dream trying to hold itself together. Sometimes the forest seemed kind. Water would appear when she was thirsty. A glowing flower would bloom at her feet when she felt cold? The moon would part the clouds just enough for her to see a little further. But other times, the forest felt like it was holding her in place. She came to a clearing full of mirrors, dozens of them, hanging from the trees and half buried in moss. When she looked into them, none of them showed her face, just shadows and flickers of places. A woman on a kitchen floor, a hand reaching out, a man's shadow falling across the light. She stumbled away, breath ragged. She didn't understand, but the forest didn't explain. Elira began to understand something was wrong. Not just with the forest, though it was strange in a way she couldn't explain, but within herself. The days here felt endless, and yet somehow measured. She could feel a rhythm, like the ticking of an invisible clock. Something was waiting, or testing her. She couldn't say how she knew, she just did. The glimpses of people she saw, the fleeting faces, the warped reflections, the haunting laughter, felt like hallucinations and more like hints. Symbols placed carefully, like pieces of a story she didn't know she was supposed to solve. But she was failing. Every time she thought she was close to understanding, the forest changed. Their paths rearranged, and the trees changed color. Time twisted itself into strange knots. And worst of all, a deep dread began to settle in her bones. Like if she stayed here too long, she would lose the very question she was trying to answer. Even though Elira couldn't remember her life, she knew something was off about this place. The forest was indeed magical, and even though it was confusing, this place brought her comfort. But she couldn't ignore a feeling of something else, something missing. She didn't want to stay. She whispered aloud, "How can I be free of this place?" The trees began to glow faintly with silver light, and the hour between began. It wasn't marked by clocks or the sky, but something inside her. A pulling sensation in her chest, a flicker of clarity. Like just for 1 hour each night, the fog in her mind would lift slightly. That first night, in the hour, she wandered deeper than she ever had. She came to a broken cabin in a moonlit field. Something out of this place in the endless woodland. The door was cracked open. Inside, nothing but shadows and dust. And then, a sound. A voice. Her voice. Screaming. She stumbled back, eyes wide, as the walls melted into something else. A room she didn't recognize, but her body remembered. A kitchen with cracked tile, broken plates on the floor, and blood on the walls. A man shouting, then black, nothingness. She ran from it. The forest welcomed her back, closed around her like a cocoon. She didn't sleep that night, just sat at the base of a crooked tree, shaking. On the second night, the hour returned. When the stillness fell, she followed the cold wind down a new path, and the forest shifted again. The cabin was there, but when she entered, she saw long corridors, beeping, slow, steady beeping sounds. A monitor A soft, mechanical hum and footsteps. A voice saying her name in a language filled with fatigue. Elira. She turned towards the sound, but the wall stretched like elastic, pulling everything further away. I'm not dead, she whispered. And something in the forest answered, not in words, but in a feeling that wrapped around her. No, not yet. On the third night, the hour came again, and this time, she didn't back away. She followed the voice through a field of ash trees, their bark whispering with every step. She heard a voice and she remembered. Her mother's voice, older now. A prayer half spoken. The sound of someone holding her hand and begging her to come back. She stopped in the middle of the path. Her legs trembled. Why can't I hear them? She whispered into the trees. Where am I, really? The forest gave no answer, but Elira was beginning to see. She wasn't in a dream. She was something between going and staying. But now, Elira had grown used to the patterns of this place. The way the trees leaned in certain directions when the hour approached, and the tug inside her chest, that invisible string pulling her towards something she couldn't name. She was on her way again, determined to go further this time. But suddenly she heard something. Sobbing. The sound wasn't like the forest's usual tricks. It wasn't distant or warped. It was close. And then, from between two twisted birches, he stumbled out. A boy, no more than 7 or 8. His dark skin smudged with dirt. The little boy's shirt was soaked in blood. So much blood, from a deep wound in his belly. He clutched it as if trying to hold himself together, both physically and emotionally. Elira rushed forward, her instincts overriding everything. Hey, it's okay. You're safe now. He stared at her, hiccuping sobs. Where's my mom? She dropped to her knees and opened her arms. I don't know yet, but I'll stay with you, okay? He nodded, stepping into her arms, as his small body trembled. She cradled him carefully, shielding his wound, whispering the only comfort she had. We're going to the hour. We'll understand things there, just a little further, okay? They walked together, her hand holding his, blood trailing behind them in the grass. When the sky began to dim and the trees turned silver, she felt it. The hour had come. They reached the same cabin, but inside, it showed them a different scene. Elira saw things she had no way of knowing. A car crash, screams, twisted metal, the boy being propelled forward, a surgery room and monitors beeping erratically, a woman screaming his name, begging for a miracle. The boy stood in silence, watching it all. And then he turned to her. I'm scared, he whispered. Elira knelt and held his face in her hands. I know, but this is the way back. I think it's your way out. You're not meant to stay here. His lips trembled. I want my mom. I know, said Elira. I think she's calling you right now. The boy looked towards the light and took a step, then another. He paused once, just before the threshold, and looked back at her. "Will you come with me?" Her smile was sad. "I don't think I can. Not yet. But I'm glad I met you. It's gonna be okay." He nodded, and she watched him disappear into the mist. Elira surged forward, but where the path had been was only grass and mist, nothing more. She stood there for a long while, staring at the empty space. Somewhere deep inside, she knew she wouldn't see him again. But she also hoped he was gone in the best way. Home. She sat under a tree until the hour faded. Holding her knees to her chest, she thought about the boy. She didn't even know his name. But tomorrow would come, even in this strange place. And so would another hour. The next day, Elira made her way towards the cabin and felt the hour set upon her. When she stepped inside, she saw nothing but an empty room. The forest didn't call to her. No one waited on the other side. But there was a light that emerged. She didn't hesitate and walked through it. With each step, the forest behind her faded. The smell of pine, the cold presence of trauma she hadn't understood until now. It all dimmed, then nothing. She strained to open her eyes, but they were almost blind from the light. Her body felt foreign and heavy, like it had been poured into a mold that no longer fit. A nurse gasped and hurried from the room. She couldn't move, couldn't speak, but her mind screamed, "I'm awake." The days blurred. Doctors came and went. Nurses cried when they saw her. She learned that it had been 25 years. She had slipped into darkness as a young woman and returned in middle age. Her parents were older, more fragile, but they held her like no time had passed. Her sister had gray at her temples now. There were nieces and nephews she'd never met. Her voice hadn't returned yet. Her muscles barely obeyed her. She felt like a ghost, and yet she was alive. Rehabilitation began. There was one doctor who came more often than the others. He seemed very young to her, but his presence calmed her. She often caught herself watching him, his profile, the kindness in his eyes, the way he smiled when she managed a small victory. Something about him felt familiar. And one afternoon, he sat beside her with a cup of tea. "You know," he began, "when I was a kid, I nearly died." She blinked at him. "A car accident. I was bleeding out by the time they got me into surgery. I don't remember about what much happened, except for the strange dream I had. A forest, I think." He laughed softly. "Huh. I haven't thought about it in years." He lifted his shirt. Just above his navel was a long, faded scar. She stared, and then she knew. He continued. "The doctor said it was a miracle. No one expected me to live. It's why I wanted to be a doctor, so I could help give someone else that same chance." He smiled at her. "Life's strange, isn't it?" She nodded, barely. She thought about the forest. It seemed like a distant dream now. She spent 5 nights wandering, and for 25 years she was asleep in reality. She wondered what it meant. Perhaps the forest became a part of her to help her heal. But she knew one thing. If her and the boy never crossed paths, there may have been no miracle at all. She struggled reaching for his name tag. He seemed to understand her. He pulled it off and held it up for her. "Michael. My name is Michael."